Hello and welcome to Gangs All Here. My name is Ryan Sampson. I'm going to be the producer and host of the show this season, episode 1. But I'm going to be doing with that guy right there, Brian Costello. We're going to break down all Jets football all season long. We're really excited because this team, we've been waiting for it all off season. Coz, how you doing, man? I know we're here week 1. Can you believe it?
Feels like it's been a long road, Ryan. It's been a long time coming. We've been talking about the same stuff for months. I'm anxious to see some actual football, and welcome to the show. Glad to have you here. It should be an interesting season. It always is.
Always is with the Jets. And, Coz, before we get into anything, I just want to say, we're going to be doing this every single week here on YouTube, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcasts. It's going to be everywhere. Gangs All Here. Please comment, subscribe, hit that like and subscribe to New York Post Sports YouTube channel. We're looking forward to seeing all the fans interact with us, and we're going to have fun this year because we're expecting big things from this Jets team. So, Coz, a little preview for what we're looking for this show, and we're going to talk about Haason Reddick. We're going to talk about the Jets offense versus 49ers defense, the other way around, the defense against this 49ers offense, and we'll do some over-under, and then we'll do some predictions. So let's start off with Haason Reddick. He's still not in the building. I know you're there right now.
Yep.
It's been the talk all offseason with this team. Rodgers said it before the end of last year. We want to limit the distractions. Anything that has nothing to do with winning, we keep that outside the building. The Jets make the move and trade for Haason Reddick after Bryce Huff walks in free agency. So, Coz, your take on the situation here. He has not shown up at all for training camp. He's racked up insane amount of fines. And it seems like we're just at a standstill here where we have no idea, and I don't know if you do at this point, of when is he going to show up? Is he going to show up? What is your read on this situation with Haason Reddick and the New York Jets?
Yeah, I mean, here's the tricky thing, Ryan, with trying to predict when he's going to be here. It can change with one phone call, right? If Haason Reddick decides, all right, enough, I'm going to show, he'll show up, right? So it's hard to say, there's no indication that's happening now. So to me, I don't see this ending. I can't see an ending in sight right now. But again, no one knows what's in Haason Reddick's heart and mind and what his agents are telling him. He could end this whenever he wants. But right now, there's doesn't feel like there's any communication going on that I can tell between the team and Reddick. I went to see him on Tuesday night in Jersey City at a charity event. He didn't want to talk to me and a couple other reporters. It didn't seem like things were good, and I talked to a few people after that in the building, and it didn't seem like they knew what was going on. No one seems to know much about the situation, about when it could end. In terms of a distraction, Ryan, like you mentioned, Rodgers' quote from last year, I do not think this is a distraction for the team right now. I think this is more of something the fans are talking about than the team necessarily. I'm talking about players. Front office coaches, I think they're talking about it, but I don't think the players are. I think the players just kind of show up and they're ready to go. Now, here's where things can change, because right now I feel like Haason Reddick has no leverage, right? Things can change Monday night. if Brock Purdy comes out of this game with a clean uniform and throws for 350 yards or something, all of a sudden Haason Reddick has some leverage Tuesday morning. So that's going to be telling what happens there. Can Will McDonald, can Jermaine Johnson, can Michael Clemens, can any of them pressure the quarterback and make people forget about Haason Reddick Monday night? That to me is the next key point here.
Yeah, no, Coz, you hit up the big thing too for me is the leverage, right? Because the fines, it's up to what, over $2 million probably at this point.
It was over $2 million, and now he's going to lose his game check, which
game check $800,000 a game check.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for him and his agent, I guess when you look at the scenario and the way it was played out, right? The Jets let Bryce Huff walk in free agency. They weren't going to sign him. They weren't going to franchise tag him. He goes to Philadelphia, and then the Jets negotiate this trade with Philadelphia to say, we'll give you a third that can turn to a 2. We're going to get one of the best pass rushers in football on the last year of his deal. And the question I think a lot of fans have is, in that scenario, when you're playing this out, how did Joe Douglas and this front office not know enough in that situation to say, we might be dealing with a big time holdout here? Or do you think there's more in this situation that's played out behind the scenes that hasn't come out yet, about the conversations that Reddick's agent and Joe Douglas probably had about, hey man, come in the building first for off-season workouts, and then we can discuss a contract? Is that possibly a play here?
Yeah, I mean, you talk to the Jets, they thought they had an agreement that he was going to show up. And, I think fans know how this works now. When a team is going to trade someone, they give the agent permission to talk to other teams. And basically the agent goes out and finds a trade, right? And if the player doesn't like, many times part of that is a contract negotiation. And we've seen it plenty of times in recent years. And if a player doesn't like what he's hearing, the player can say, I don't want that trade. We saw with Brandon Ayuk, right? He was going to go to Cleveland. Sounded like the 49ers liked the package from Cleveland, but then Ayuk didn't like what the Cleveland was telling him, or New England, Pittsburgh, all these things. So I have to think that at some point Reddick said he was good with whatever the Jets were telling him. And I don't think the Jets were promising him a contract extension. I think they offered him one before that he rejected. I think the Jets felt like he was going to show up and they would get the contract done some point down the line, maybe mid-season, maybe after the season. But he was going to play this year out. Clearly, that's not what he thought. So somewhere along the line, there was a miscommunication or somebody changed their mind. But I mean, he's got a big time agent, Ryan. Like, this isn't
right.
Tory Danny. Like, he just negotiated CeeDee Lamb. He just negotiated Patrick Surtain,
AJ Brown last year or a couple years ago.
Yeah, DK Metcalf. Like, this isn't a nickel and dime agent. So it's weird. The whole situation is very weird because it's weird that Tory would be advising his client to do this because it's not the same thing as Trent Williams holding out or Jamar Chase holding out, where they played for the team.
They played for the team.
Equity.
Right.
He has no equity in this building, right? So,
right. And that's good on Joe Douglas in the front office to say, listen, that's our policy. You got to walk in the door and actually show up here before we even start negotiating. You haven't played a single down. You haven't taken a single practice rep. You haven't met with any of your teammates. We don't know how you're going to jive with our coaches. We know nothing about you. We just know the production you have on the field and how great of a player you can be. But we got to get you in-house before we can even start negotiating.
Yeah, yes and no to me. Like, I mean, I guess it depends on what you're negotiating. If you're negotiating a contract extension for a huge raise, I'm with you. If you're negotiating like a contract adjustment where he gets more incentives or he gets more guaranteed money, I think you could have done that just to make him happy to get him here. I know Joe Douglas is very concerned with how this is going to be played in the locker room because there's a lot of guys in there who have contracts coming up. They just got one done with Michael Carter, but DJ Reed has one coming up. Obviously, we know the young guys, Sauce and Garrett and Brees and Jermaine Johnson.
AVT's due up for a contract if he stays healthy. Yep.
I think there's other guys who might be looking for more money, so he's worried about that. But I think they could have maybe, and I still think this might be how it ends, is the Jets do something to his contract to get him in the door.
And that's ultimately the question is, when will he show up? And I know you can't say when or because no one really knows when it will happen. We heard Robert Saleh today speak, and you guys asked him, are you going to roll him out for Monday? And he still wasn't willing to rule him out for Monday, which is crazy because you do look at that Nick Bosa situation last year. He showed up on that Thursday before that game, and he ended up playing in week 1. But I don't know if that's going to actually play out this way, considering Nick Bosa was with the 49ers, knows the defensive schemes. You're talking about implanting a new player in this entire team, Well,
I think what they do with Reddick now, if he showed up, is they'd have a package of 10 to 15 snaps for him where his instructions are go get the quarterback, right? Like,
exactly.
It's not going to be complicated. He's not going to be dropping into coverage or anything like that. It's going to be, and it would be a minimal amount of plays. So I guess you could still say he could do that if he shows up tomorrow or Saturday. But yeah, today was the day to me. Like, if he wasn't here today, this felt like a kind of a soft deadline. But they're not willing to say that yet.
They're not willing to say that. It feels weird. I know it probably is weird for you guys too, just because he is the last player holding out for a contract. We saw Jamar Chase. He showed up to the Bengals. He's practicing now. Trent Williams ended up getting signed, and Brandon Ayuk got him getting done. So I don't know, man. Coz, it's like you say who has more leverage here. The Jets have the leverage, but until Monday night, when we get to that situation, which we're going to talk about here in a sec, of how this defense is going to be able to generate pressures on the 49ers. It's just like another one of those, like, I guess not, you're not calling it a distraction, but it feels like a distraction for the fans, obviously, because
I think it's a big distraction for the fans. I really don't think the players care, especially they don't even know him.
Right.
Like the Revis thing years ago was different because Revis was already such an integral part of the defense that his absence was glaring. Reddick is a guy, like, it's I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like, a bet or something where you lose money you never had. Like it's just they don't even. I don't think they're really thinking about him as part of the team right now. Even so,
Yeah.
to me, he does have a locker. There is an empty locker in the locker room with the number 7 on it. That's his locker. But I don't think they're really thinking about it except when we ask them for it. And to me, Ryan, the Jets will be okay without him. Where the Jets need him is, if they go where they think they're going and they're playing the game at Arrowhead in January, then you need Haason Reddick. He makes a difference on this defense. You can't tell me this defense isn't better with him, without him here. There's no way it's better. So, they can survive without him. They're a good enough defense. But if they want to win big games in December, January, and dare I say February, that's when you need this guy.
No, I totally agree, Coz. And I think the other thing I want to hit on before we move on to the actual game itself is that, do you feel like the Jets are kicking themselves at all for letting Bryce Huff, a guy that was homegrown, walk out that door just as a free agent without even trading him last year when there was rumors if they should have got it done, or even franchise tag him and make him available, or still bring him back this year and load up this defense like you said you're all in this year with Aaron Rodgers?
I guess that depends on who you're talking about, Ryan, right? I think the coaches really were miserable the day Bryce Huff got signed by the Eagles. The coaches wanted him back. This decision was way above that, though. So, I think a decision was made at the highest levels of this organization that they weren't going to pay Bryce Huff, and so the franchise tag, you could throw that out the window because that would have been $23 million, I think it was, and that's all cash, right? You're not prorating that. In terms of trading him, I don't think they were down that road. Like they weren't that far down that road yet. I think they thought they were going to still resign him at that point. His price tag went up. As the season went on, his price tag kept going up when he kept getting sacks. Right? He got the 10th sack. I got the last 9th and 10th sack in New England that last game. I remember at least one. So the price tag jumped there. But I do think that there's people in this building that are probably saying, God, what do we do? Why isn't Bryce Huff here? Especially, if he has a big season in Philadelphia, they'll really be saying that.
It feels weird, man, that the way that all went down. And I know the cap, you tell me, and this is the other thing that we've seen the Jets recently rework the deals for a couple of players here to create some cap space. Is that possibly a sign that maybe Joe Douglas is, I don't know, texting the agent like, hey, I'm starting to play for this? No,
I don't think so. I mean, look, so what happens is today is the day where the salary cap changes, and they count. They call it the top 51. So the top 51 salaries now count toward the salary cap. You'll see it. Everyone around the league is making adjustments to contracts. Like I think when Field Yates reported that from ESPN the other day, he had like 6 players on his tweet, right?
Yeah.
2 of them were Jets. Everything else, like this is part of doing business this week. Like you don't adjust contracts next week, you adjust them this week. And all they do, so you understand, is they're taking the player's base salary and they just hand them a bonus. So they're just handing them a check. Sure. And then you can count that money. If since it's a bonus, you can count that money over the next few years. Like you can prorate it. So it's just the cost of doing business. And teams do it all the time for different reasons. The Jets might have been looking for space to roll over into next year. They may have been looking just for operating money. Like once Reddick does, if they think Reddick does come, now his $14 million counts toward the cap. So I did not read into that. Like, oh my gosh, Reddick's coming. I just don't anticipate this being, if he does show up, like a very big raise for him. I think it's going to be just a little contract adjustment. So to me, that was just the normal course of doing business this week, is adjusting contracts.
And what's still wild about it all is that if he, let's say, wants to pull Le'Veon Bell, sit out the entire year, but then again, it's different situations, but he sits out the entire year, right? The Jets still retain his free agent rights next year, unless he shows up and plays 6 games this year.
Bell did that on the franchise
Correct.
tag, remember? So he didn't sign the franchise tag, so then he became a free agent the next year.
Right.
Yeah, Reddick has a contract. So this contract will toll. I think he has to play, 6 games?
6 games.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so if the contract would toll and he'd still be a Jet next year.
Let's say he shows
I
up.
imagine, they'd be working very hard to trade him in the offseason, but they would still retain his rights.
What's wild too to me is that, let's say Reddick and his agent are scheming out, let's get you just those 6 games, and then maybe you pop up with an injury afterward, or they say let's show up for week 12, right, to start playing. You're banking on your client to be healthy for all 6 of those games if you really are trying to play this out
Yeah.
that way. But again, you're also
I
you're
think
painting yourself
Danny,
poorly in the rest of the NFL, mind you,
Yeah.
too. Like, who's going to give you that big deal after that?
I think Torrey Danny's too smart to play it like that. He's a good agent. I don't like.
But he's not playing week 1. He's not
business. Yeah, but we've seen other guys not play week 1 before. You know, Emmitt Smith's out 3 games way back when. It's you know, I think you know, last year Chris Jones didn't play week 1 for the Chiefs.
Right.
So, you know, the weird part of this is that the guy hasn't been part of the team, but does make it a weird situation. But I think at some point he'll be here. I just don't know when that's going to be.
Certainly what a lot of Jets fans are going to be paying attention to, but there is a football game for us to talk about. So let's talk about week 1, Jets 49ers. Of course, the schedule gods, the NFL people knew what they were doing here, right? Aaron Rodgers goes back to San Francisco. This is the return that everyone's been waiting for his Jets fans. We only got 4 plays last year, robbed. Tragedy and tragic that season was. We are now here in 2024. Coz, this is a massive game. And this could be what some people are labeling as possibly a Super Bowl preview. This is 2 very talented teams playing on Monday Night Football. I know for you, I want to kind of spin it and keep it with the Jets defense here, right? Because let's say Haason Reddick is not going to be playing on that defense. The matchups that you're looking forward to for this Jets defense against a very, very talented 49ers offense where they have all of their weapons in Ayuk, Debo, Kittle, CMC, Trent Williams, everyone's there. How do you see this matchup playing for the Jets defense in this tall task and facing the 49ers offense?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great test for this defense, which obviously has a lot of confidence. You know, and what's interesting, Ryan, is, you know, I think part of the equation when people were talking about this team was just everyone kind of assumes this defense will be top 5 again after the last 2 years. And can they do that? You know, I'm not sure. Will they take a step back? Like, it's going to be interesting to watch that. You know, I think there's matchups all over the place that are interesting here. I think if you're looking for where the Jets could have an advantage, if you're looking for a 49ers weakness, I should say, this offensive line for the 49ers isn't that impressive, right? They're going to be starting a rookie at right guard, which that could lead to a big day for Quinn Williams. Obviously, they have Trent Williams at left tackle, but he hasn't practiced much. So maybe they get a reduced level of Trent Williams and they can exploit that. But I think, you know, the Jets should be able to have success up front against the 49ers. And then you have confidence that Sauce, DJ Reed, and Michael Carter can do the job against these receivers. Kittle's an interesting one. You know, who guards Kittle? He's great. That'll be interesting. And McCaffrey.
You're talking about 2 safeties here. Chuck Clark didn't play at all last year. Tony Adams. They got a tall task going up against George Kittle. He is not an easy guy to defend.
Yeah, and then McCaffrey is a Swiss Army knife. So that's going to be a tough one for Quincy Williams, I think, and CJ Mosley. So this is, I think I saw a stat. What was it, right? The 49ers led the league last year in yards per play, and the Jets led the league last year in yards allowed per play. So that's going to be a great battle to watch.
Yeah, the thing that I'm also worried about too is Debo Samuel. I mean, that guy is a horse, and when he gets the ball in his hands and he's running it, like, I know the Jets have 2 very good linebackers, and Quincy Williams can stay with some of the best of them, but he's going to have to go. Like, Debo Samuel is a tough task and a tall ass. If he's in the middle of that field, you got to make that play on him because that's another guy who can just break it if he finds some space on that defense. And you know the Jets are going to be playing most likely some zone defense against this 49ers team. I mean, Ayuk, I think Sauce and DJ are up for the task against Ayuk, but those other guys, the CMCs, the Debos, and the Kittles, that middle of the field, that's going to be tough for the Jets to try and stop. And like you said, it's all about the pressure you can get on Brock Purdy. You make him uncomfortable. You saw it in the Super Bowl. You make him uncomfortable, get pressure on him. You can get after him and force him to make mistakes.
That's every quarterback on earth. Right?
No, I know.
Yeah,
I know.
Right? Like Patrick Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes is a magician, though. You know,
like against Tampa Bay, though, in the Super Bowl. They got to him, and he lost the game. So, yeah, I agree with you. The middle of the field is going to be key here because also the Jets' style of defenses don't allow the big play, right? No explosives. That's Salah's mantra. So they're going to be playing back, trying not to let those guys beat them with explosive plays. But the thing is, like McCaffrey, Kittle, Debo, like these guys can catch a short pass and make it an explosive play. So tackling is going to be key. And I always think tackling is not very good at the beginning of the season because they haven't done it, right? None of these guys played in the preseason. They don't tackle in training camp. So sometimes you see these first couple of games and the tackling is brutal. So that's another thing to watch in this game.
Yeah, I mean, the 49ers, everything's off motion for them. We all know that. Kyle Shanahan loves having motions, whether it's in the backfield or his wide receivers, getting them on the move, getting the ball in their hands quick and try and let them make big plays. So again, like you said, limit the big plays for this Jets defense. Those guys we're all going to be paying attention to, obviously. The other thing I think, Coz, is, and you've touched on it here, is do you think there's enough on that defensive line to get pressure on Brock Purdy? So is there more pressure this week on Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald, Michael Clemens, Quinnen Williams, all those guys, even Takk McKinley? I know he'll be in the rotation a little bit. Is the pressure now on them? It's like, hey, guys, the world's going to be watching you right here because we know Haason Reddick's not here. It's time for you guys to show up and get after the quarterback.
Yeah, I definitely think so, especially Will McDonald. This is now his second year. He didn't have a big role last year, so he's going to be spotlighted in this game. You can guarantee that by ESPN. He's been a big story all training camp, preseason, so he's got to show up. This is an important game for him. Can Jermaine Johnson build off of what he did last year? And the guy you didn't mention is Javon Kinlaw, who came from the 49ers, and he's had a really good training camp. And I think he's a big part of what the Jets are planning this season for defense. I think he's a key to this defense. I think they feel like he could open some things up for Quinnen, draw some attention. So, what can he do in this game?
Yeah, no, Javon Kinlaw is a good one, and he's a big boy against that. Like you said, that interior, it's fresh. I mean, the 49ers, they're going to need time to gel, obviously, with the new guys. So maybe make it a couple plays from the interior. That's what it's going to be, Coz. I mean, if it limit the big plays, that's ultimately what it comes down to. All right, Coz, let's go over to the Jets offense. They obviously have the guy, number 8, coming back, Aaron Rodgers. Jets fans have been hyped for this guy for over 2 years now. We are obviously robbed after for 4 plays last year. I don't know, guys. I think it's obvious. The offense is going to run through Aaron Rodgers, right? Nathaniel Hackett's calling the plays, but Rodgers is the one that's running it on the field. Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, all the weapons are there for him. For you and what you're paying attention to, what's it going to be for this Jets offense? Are you in the mode of, let me get through the first series like most Jets fans and make sure Rodgers is healthy, and then we can exhale a little bit, and then you can actually see how this offense operates? I mean, how are you watching this for the start of this game?
I think it's going to take them a while to gel as an offense. Honestly, I think it'll be a few weeks for this offense to really hit its stride. A lot of new pieces, right? You talk about the offensive line, talk about Mike Williams. Rodgers has had a year off. That's not easy to come back from. So I do think this could take a little while for them to gel and get going, but they have a ton of potential. We saw it this summer in camp. There were some days where the offense just was clicking, and for years that I've watched training camp, it's almost always been dominated by the defense with the Jets. Always going back to Rex, it's always been the defense. So the offense won its share of battles, and they certainly won their. When they played against the Giants in that joint practice, they won the day there. So I think the potential is huge here, but I would not be surprised if it starts off a little slower than Jets fans expect.
Okay, so you're tempering your expectations a little bit here to start, just to see, how they gel, how they get together.
Yeah, it's tough. The beginning of the season is tough, and it's become tougher with people can argue about preseason.
Training camp's a joke now, too.
Yeah, I do think there's a little value in preseason games of just operating together. And there's, Mike Williams just really started practicing a couple weeks ago. He's going to be limited in how much he plays anyway. But to me, the defenses are always way ahead when the season starts. So I think it could take a little while for the offense to get going.
Now, you mentioned the offensive line. We saw there was, 50-plus combinations last season for this Jets team in that offensive line. Every game, every week, there was a new combination starting. The one thing we're hoping for is or for us as Jets fans, that we are hoping for is that we can see some kind of consistency for this offensive line. You highlight Tyron Smith, an all-pro. They've monitored his training camp reps to make sure he can stay healthy for week 1. You have John Simpson they brought over from the Ravens. Joe Tippmann is going to be another year as a starter. You have AVT back at right guard, and now we have Morgan Moses at right tackle, who they traded for from the Ravens as well. The pieces are there, Coz. I mean, the offensive line feels like if they can, and that's the big question with this entire team ultimately, the health, right? If they can stay healthy, though, this offensive line can do some damage against some of these teams that they're going up against and protect Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, on paper it looks great. It's can they stay on the field? And even beyond last year, the Jets have had a tough time keeping guys on the field. You go back to the great offensive line the Jets had in 08, 09. Those guys played together every game. They didn't miss a game. But it feels like since then it's been there's always injuries, and you look across the league. This isn't just a Jets problem. A lot of teams have offensive line issues and depth issues. So I do think drafting Olu was a smart move. So they have some depth at tackle if those guys do go down. Moses or Tyron if they have injuries. And then they do feel good about the experience guys got last year, like Xavier Newman, Wes Schweitzer. These guys they've played.
Yep.
So but they're excited about the line. I mean, the guy that keeps getting talked about here is John Simpson. Rodgers was raving about him today. Salah's raved about him. I think they've been very impressed by him, who kind of came with less of a reputation than Tyron Smith, certainly, and even Morgan Moses. A little more unknown, but they really like what they've seen from him.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like he grades out well from PFF as a road grader and in the run game. That will be a thing I think a lot of us are going to be paying attention to is Breece Hall, how he gets going in this game. The 49ers are a little banged up on defense, and this is a new defensive coordinator. They obviously fired Steve Wilkes at the end of the season. Yeah. Dre Greenlaw, who tore his Achilles in the Super Bowl, he's out. That's a pretty big loss for them against the run. So I feel like, Coz, there's a big mismatch there a little bit. If you can ground and pound up in the middle, I understand Fred Warner is Fred Warner, but you're missing one of the better linebackers in Dre Greenlaw. The Jets should be able to run the ball on this 49ers defense, I feel like.
Yeah, you'd think. I mean, Hargrave is tough in the middle. He's pretty good. And, obviously Bosa is just a great all-around player. Fred Warner, you mentioned. But, yeah, I think if you're looking for one area to exploit, that's it, is run the ball up the middle with Breece. Breece is obviously fresh, and they could have a great advantage there, and also maybe take some of the pressure off Rodgers in week one. I think one thing you have to watch with Rodgers is he going to come out and try to do too much? Like, is he going to be too amped up? This is obviously going to be a very emotional game for him coming back. He's from that area. I think you could see some early jitters from him, even though he's 40 years old and has played 20 years. I still think this he could come out a little bit too amped up. So they could calm him down with some, if Breece can run the ball early a little bit and get some success doing that.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it against the Bills last year. I mean, Breece broke off with that first run. So, I mean, you can get the big play like that and hopefully can calm the nerves a little bit for Rodgers to operate this offense. The one thing I think a lot of, for me, I want to ask you, Coz, is let's say this Jets offense struggles against this 49ers defense. Mind you, this is, again, a team that was in the Super Bowl last year, is in the NFC Championship every single year. So this is a tough test as it is. But let's say this Jets offense gets off to a slow start. Rodgers looks, like you say, a little shaky. Maybe he was a little nervous in the beginning. It gets to him a little bit. Maybe he throws one touchdown, only like 190, 220 yards passing. And you just really didn't see this offense get into a fluid rhythm, right? Are you and the rest of the media going to look at this and say, we're going to judge it immediately off this one game? Or, maybe we need to see a couple weeks before this, we can start really taking some solace and examples out of this offense?
Both. Here's how it works, Ryan. There's the immediate reaction. I mean, it's late Monday, but Tuesday morning, people would be going nuts about it. Is Rodgers done? Like, I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about in general. There will be calls, and then by like Thursday, people will calm down. All right, like, you know what? It was one game. We really need to see more. That's the cycle now. There's always overreaction, especially week one. There's always overreaction the night after the game, the day after the game, and then by the time you get 2 or 3 days away, people start to have perspective again and realize, it's just one of 17.
One of 17, and again, I cannot stress this enough. This is a very, very good 49ers team. Yeah. It's arguably the best team in the NFC.
mean, if they look terrible against Tennessee, then that's a a story.
Then you can talk about calming me down and how I feel about this team the following week. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, but again, the pressure. So we've talked about it in detail, and you have written about it in the offseason. All the pressure is mounted on this Jets offense and team, Rodgers and Nathaniel Hackett. A lot of people were calling for, Nathaniel Hackett in the offseason. We heard Robert Saleh possibly called Arthur Smith and, bringing other offense. Not possibly, but he did.
Yeah, he had dinner with Arthur Smith. Yeah.
So again, the Jets team and the staff knew that they had some issues with the offense last year, to put it lightly. For you, like, how are you going to judge this? I know I'm asking this again, but how are you going to judge this offense? Like, this is Rodgers' guy. This is Nathaniel Hackett.
Hackett's in a no-win situation, Ryan. Completely. Like, I kind of feel bad for him, right? Because if the Jets' offense is awesome, who gets the credit?
It's Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
If the Jets' offense is terrible, who's going to get the blame? Nathaniel Hackett.
I know.
Yeah, he's in an awful situation, really bad. So, I don't know how to judge it because, reading Ian O'Connor's fantastic book, our former colleague, about Aaron Rodgers, one of the things that jumped out to me was like just how much control he had over the offense in Green Bay. Like, they were saying, like, the coaches on the sideline wouldn't even know what the plays were that they were running because he was just like making plays up out there. So, it's gonna how
he's Oppenheimer, right? That's what Tyler Conklin called him. He's Oppenheimer of football.
Hackett's gonna get blamed if it doesn't go well, but I'm not sure that's exactly fair.
No, I agree. I mean, I just want to see some good offense, Coz. That's what I've been begging to see. It's been a while. But like, am I crazy to think that Breece Hall can go off in this game? Like, I just feel like he's really that big piece. I know Garrett Wilson. Yeah. There's that storyline with him and Charvarius Ward, because Ward kind of called him out in the offseason saying, Garrett Wilson, is that who your number one is? That's all I'll be covering. I'm sure Aaron and Garrett are going to try and get the ball to him a bunch of times as well. But Breece Hall is your X factor. I mean, he's the special weapon. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. Hopefully Nathaniel Hackett remembers that and can call up some plays for him to catch the ball. But yeah, man, I mean, that's what I'm paying attention to, really, for me.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think Breece could have a big game. He's had a great summer, and he's 2 years removed now from ACL, so I think he's primed for big things. And I do think there's something to him playing McCaffrey. I think he kind of wants to show he's on the same level as McCaffrey. He's mentioned it a couple times, like not exactly that, but just talking about McCaffrey. So I do think there's something to that, and he could have a nice game here. And Garrett, it could take a little while for Garrett and Rodgers to build that game chemistry. So it might be a running game to start here.
Right. It could be slow. I've heard and read a lot from people that this could be a sluggish game by both offenses trying to feel each other out, see if they can get those explosives, right? The other thing we got to talk about in this offense is Allen Lazard. He's had a pretty good summer from all reports in training camp. He could be, again, another weapon for Rodgers to hopefully get some plays, move the chains, maybe that couple third downs in the red zone. What can he be? What are your expectations for Allen Lazard in year 2 with the Jets?
Yeah, that's a tough one. He has had a good camp, and Rodgers definitely trusts him. So, I have a feeling, Ryan, we're going to get like one game where Lazard has like just a great game where he scores multiple touchdowns, puts up a lot of yards, and he could be early because I think he's going to get a lot of playing time with Mike Williams limited. They're going to limit Mike Williams' snaps, so I think Lazard will get there. But it's clear that Rodgers loves Lazard and trusts him. I was talking to one of his teammates the other day who said, they were saying, like, you just see how much trust he has in Lazard and how much he likes the guy. So, I do think there's going to be a role for Lazard here. He's certainly going to have a better year than he had last year when he was inactive for a bunch of games there at the end of the year.
Yeah, he's certainly trying to rewrite his Jets' early career so far. First year went absolutely horrendous for him. Yeah. Granted, he did lose his starting quarterback, but it did not go well for Allen Lazard. He's looking for a better start to this year, and hopefully they can get him going, and have him be a big part and factor into this offense. But we still have to talk more about Aaron Rodgers. So I alluded to this earlier about Aaron Rodgers, and ultimately he spoke today about the chip on his shoulder, what he's thinking about this season. It's all been about him. This pressure that's mounted on him. He put himself in New York. He wants to win here. I think he wants to ultimately end up, riding off into the sunset, bringing a championship to this city and this franchise that's been desperate for winning football for a long time, Coz. So he spoke today. I want to get your reaction after this. And ultimately, how did you react to this? So let me play the clip here from Aaron Rodgers. Here he was today, speaking at the Jets facility before practice.
If you were playing with a chip, because we asked him.
Oh.
So he said, ask Aaron.
I mean, how do you not? You know, I mean, I've always kind of played with something on my shoulder. You got to, manufacture things from time to time. But, yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to the prove it. Who do I need to prove to? Just myself at this point. So, but I have a lot of pride in my performance. So when I take the field, I expect greatness. And because I've done it before, and so that's kind of the standard I hold myself to.
He's right, guys. That's the standard he holds himself to. And I think a lot of fans, not only Jets fans, but NFL fans hold when they watch Aaron Rodgers play football, because he is a savant. He knows what he wants to do and perform in this offense. And, he puts it on himself. He knows, he recognizes it. And I think that, to me, him being able to speak to you guys and say, yeah, I expect greatness when I go out there in the field, it's refreshing. And we just want to see it, right? That's what ultimately comes down to.
Yeah. No, I think from my perspective, you love an answer like that where a guy's honest, because a lot of times guys won't say stuff like that, but he expects to be great, and that's what you want. And, I think for the Jets, I think when they traded for Aaron Rodgers, you knew what you were getting, right? The good and the bad of Aaron Rodgers, right? The good is the guy's a 4-time MVP, one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game. He's going to be the best quarterback maybe the Jets ever had, for a season. The bad is all the podcasts and McAfee and vice president stuff and vaccine talk and, all the kind of off the field stuff he brings with him. Well, the Jets have had 90% of the bad, and I should say 99% of the bad and 1% of the good so far, right?
We've had 4 plays.
Ryan, he hasn't completed a pass as a Jet.
It's crazy, Coz.
Think about that. It feels like he's been here a while. He hasn't completed a pass yet. So to me, it's just like, can he just get on the field and be Aaron Rodgers? And then I feel for you guys. I feel for the fans. Jets fans can finally enjoy having this, because obviously, last year was a range of emotions from, anger and denial and just disbelief to being the butt of the jokes again. And then just all this stuff that Rodgers is, Jimmy Kimmel and all this stuff this offseason with Bobby Kennedy and this and that, it's been a long road to get to this game. So you just like to see Aaron Rodgers look like Aaron Rodgers, for the Jets fans here.
Hell yes, Coz. I mean, I think I had asked you when the Jets first made the move for Rodgers, and you're like, and I straight up asked you, said, Coz, can you believe you're actually going to cover arguably one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, and that he's actually going to play quarterback for the Jets? We said this before he ever took a snap for the Jets, and then you also alluded to, you go, but Ryan, it also comes with the off the field stuff, and they're going to have to cover all that too. So yeah, I mean, we just want to see the greatness on the field. That's all we care about. I
think, and I wrote a column after he skipped minicamp, right? Which that was my point. At the end of the day, those practices are meaningless, those 2 practices in terms of football, but they were significant in terms of just being here and again, it was just another log on the fire of Rodgers drama that this organization has had to deal with, and they haven't gotten the good. So maybe starting Monday night, they start to get some of the good.
Right. That's ultimately where we're hoping for, or us as, again, I keep saying, me as a fan, not as Coz, but what I am hoping for is that it finally turns, because it's been miserable and misery for years now watching this franchise. And
Ryan, I get this question all the time about, Benigno used to always yell at me that I liked them to lose. I want interesting stuff. The interesting stuff would be the Jets winning at this point. Another miserable season is not going to be interesting, and people aren't going to read what I write. People aren't going to listen to this podcast. People are going to tune out if the team is terrible and things go south again. So I'm not rooting for anything, but the best story is if this team actually has success, because it's been so long. 13 years ago, it was interesting when this team started losing, because they had gone to back-to-back championship games. People thought they were a Super Bowl team, and all of a sudden they imploded. That was interesting, but it's, the losing is not interesting anymore.
No, it's not. And ultimately, it comes down to, this team they put together. I say it. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. This is the most talented team I've ever seen the Jets put together, Coz, in my lifetime as a Jets fan. Maybe you've seen more talented teams,
Yeah,
or in your opinion, but
as talented, I'd say 2008 was a very talented team. It was
the Brett Favre year.
Brett Favre year. They obviously had a elite offensive line with Faneca and Brick and Nick and Woody and Brandon Moore. You know, the defense had a young Revis. That was a pretty talented group. Thomas Jones at running back, Chris Jenkins at nose tackle. Like that, they had some players on that team. That team to me was going to the Super Bowl before Brett Favre got hurt.
Yeah, well,
you know, I covered the game in Tennessee when they beat the 10-0 Titans. So that I always go back to that. I think that was the most talented team. Even more, I know the next 2 years they had more success.
Yeah.
But those next years they had Sanchez, a young Sanchez at quarterback, which like doesn't compare to Favre or Aaron Rodgers. So,
no, but
this is as talented as since then.
But also Rodgers is the best quarterback. You know, I think this version, you know, we'll see. I think Rodgers would argue, you know, he's going to play his best football. Like he said, he wants to have greatness out there, but that's another question too. Which version of Rodgers are we getting? Are we getting the 2022 where he played with a broken pinky, looked, you know, like maybe he's starting to hit that cliff for almost a 40-year-old quarterback? Or are we going to get the MVP Rodgers, or do we get somewhere in between?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the 2022 Rodgers would have been one of the best seasons
one of the best
quarterback ever had. So I laughed, like 26 touchdowns. I mean, God, I can count on one hand the number of times I've seen that here. So,
and what's crazy is that's not greatness for Rodgers. Rodgers' greatness is
a down year.
Yeah, it's a down year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. How much is the broken thumb? Because the numbers aren't that good from that year. I don't think he threw for 300 yards in a game that year. Like they're down. But how much was it the broken thumb is the question. So, I imagine playing quarterback with a broken thumb is not easy. So I think it's fair to say that probably had a big effect.
No, it did. And again, we're gonna see, and we're just waiting. Cannot wait to see Aaron Rodgers operate this offense. All right, guys, let's go over over-unders. Gambling has taken over the sports world, I would argue, and especially in football, it is synonymous. Fans are always looking for player props as part of those gambling, parlays or just straight bets. But I want to talk about, the over-unders here for some of the key players in this matchup and get your opinion and kind of give me maybe like a quick, why you think this would be an over-under. I want to start off with, the guy we just talked about, Aaron Rodgers. His over-under heading into this week 1 matchup is 236.5 passing yards. For you, yeah. Do you think that's over or under for Aaron Rodgers on Monday night?
That's a great number. Man, they are so good at this. I'll go over.
Over. Okay. So you think he's going to go over?
Slightly, yeah.
Slightly. Okay. And then how about his counterpart, Mr. Brock Purdy? They got him at 245.5 passing yard against its Jets defense.
I'll go over. I think week 1, I think it could be a lot of I think it could be tough sledding. So I'll go over there. Again, slightly. I don't think it's going to be a lot.
It's not going to be air yards, though. It's going to be a lot of yak, right?
There you go. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's go to the running game. We're going to go with Breece Hall. They have him at 63.5 rushing yards.
Over.
Yeah, I agree. I think Breece is
I think he'll clear that easy.
I think he'll clear that very easily. And then for Christian McCaffrey, I'm going to change it up here for you a little bit. CMC. They got him at 36.5 receiving yards in this game.
I'll go over again. I'm going all overs. I think,
Guys, you're saying this is going to be a sluggish, slow game on Monday night.
But these stats though are low to me.
This is how Vegas is betting lines.
40 yards, I would expect to have more than that.
All right, let's go to the receiving game. Let's talk about Mr. Garrett Wilson. Javarius Ward could be probably covering him. They got him at 68.5 receiving yards week 1 Monday night.
Under. I'll go under on that.
Oh, Coz is picking the under on Garrett Wilson. Okay, we'll see how he does against Javarius Ward and company. Now let's go to the other side. We had mentioned George Kittle, and I am interested to see what you think about this. 41.5 receiving yards from Mr. George Kittle.
So I went over on McCaffrey, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll go under on Kittle with that.
Okay.
Over McCaffrey. So
maybe the Jets know they got
to have big games. I don't think.
Maybe the Jets know they got to stop George Kittle, and then finally, Debo, Mr. Yak, Samuel right here, 48.5 receiving yards for Debo.
I'll go over on that again slightly. I can see him having 60 yards, 65 yards, something like that.
Would not shock. I think Debo can break off a 60-yard touchdown, no problem, if we're being honest, in how he plays the game. All right, that's over under. Coz, finally, we're going to wrap this all up. I want to talk about game predictions. This is ultimately how you see this game going. I just want to hear what you got, man.
Week 1's tough, Ryan, right? You don't really know what to expect. There's a lot of variables here. I just think the 49ers are such a good team. And I just think they're further along than the Jets in their development as a team, right? Like the Jets are trying to get to what the 49ers are right now, a team that goes to the championship game every year, went to the Super Bowl last year. They got all their business tied up this week with Ayuk and Williams and McCaffrey back from the calf injury. So I think it's going to be a close game, but I think they'll ultimately the 49ers pull it out at the end. I'll go – I didn't think about a score. Let me think. I will go 27-20 49ers.
27-20 49ers. For me, I'm going to make two predictions. One, Breece Hall scores the first touchdown of the game. Second prediction, I got the Jets in a 27-24 game win Monday night. I think Ayuk missing all training camp, Trent Williams missing all training camp, CMC missing most of training camp. I think that affects this 49ers team. And there's just something about this Jets team. Maybe I'm reading too much into it or being too much of a fanboy, but something feels different about this team this year. I said the same thing last year, but we're going to see week 1. I got the Jets winning 27-20. They did. So, they did. People try to forget that part because of what really was going on that night. But I got the Jets in a win. Coz, that's Gangzol here. This is the week 1 preview versus the 49ers. I cannot thank you enough for talking all football for us. We're looking forward to talking to you again next week. We'll get some reaction to how they played against the 49ers, maybe break down a little bit of what you saw there, maybe show some highlights from that. We'll talk about their week 2 matchup against the Titans. And then also, I want to let Jets fans know that we are going to do a post-game live show for Gangzol here on YouTube, on X, on Facebook. It'll be here. Me and Frankie Vittorini will be doing it after every single Jets game. We'll be broadcasting live. But as always, follow Coz during the week. We're going to be talking to him every single week for this Jets team. And hopefully, like Coz said, we can get a fun season and a good season to follow and watch. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button. And thank you as always, Coz. Appreciate you, man.
All right. Thanks, Ryan.